Well, here we are. We're about 2 miles below the cabin. This is a place where we like to call our mikvah pools. These holes ground in the bedrock and the granite out here. Just a beautiful place for mikvah. This is actually our favorite one here. If you stand in that, it only comes up to about your neck. It's really cool. Anyway, we're going to join Eric up here. I'll get the camera back on the tripod. We're going to talk about Isaiah 2 a little bit, and it's on this path. This path has to have a destination, but what's that destination look like when we get there? It should look identical to the path we're walking now. Eric, you want to start?
Sure, why don't you get that thing mounted in there? Hopefully we can still hear over this
Talk loud.
sound of the water. Okay, so instead of talking about Isaiah 2, I'm going to start off with Jonah chapter 2.
Well, that figures.
You didn't see that coming, did you?
I didn't see it coming.
Yonah is also the word for dove, the bird. But Jonah is associated with the story of the fish. And the reason I'm going to talk about Jonah here for a moment is because people asked Yeshua, give us a sign that you're the Messiah. Give us a sign about, do some tricks, some miracles. Convince us. He says the only sign you're getting is the sign of Jonah the prophet, who was in the belly of the fish 3 days and 3 nights, and then he was spewed back out, and he went back on his mission to talk to the people of Nineveh. So this whole idea of Yeshua being in the grave Friday evening and rising Sunday morning is not the sign of the prophet Jonah, who was supposed to be in the belly of the fish for 3 days and 3 nights. Not the same story. Somebody's messed with it. But besides that, we'll read chapter 2. Yahweh designated, think about what's going on here. Jonah is in the belly of the whale. That's like Israel being in the midst of the dispersion, the diaspora, the entombment of Yeshua in the grave, in the depths of the earth. It's us being lost, quarantined, bewildered, bamboozled, lied to, everything upside down, and we don't have any sense of what's right side up. Yahweh designated a large fish to swallow Jonah. And Jonah remained in the fish's innards for 3 days and 3 nights. Jonah prayed to Yahuwah that his Elohim from the fish's innards, so while we're still in the dispersion, while we're still alienated from the land and from the promises, and he said this, I called in my distress to Yahuwah, and he answered me. From the belly of the grave I cried out. You heard my voice. So here it goes from like being first person, second person, third person, like the tenses in Hebrew jump all over the place in terms of who's talking. Is it a narrative? Is it a autobiography? It's anyway. You cast me into the depth of the heart of the seas. The rivers surrounded me. All your breakers and your waves passed over me. Kind of like that picture of that waterfall there. Pretty heavy pounding where it's overwhelming. You can't personally, physically do anything about the circumstances. Kind of like this quarantine that they've imposed upon the entire planet at this point. Then I said, I was driven from before your eyes. Now this is Jonah speaking to Yahuwah. But I will again gaze at your holy temple. I think it says something different. We'll look at that in a moment. That's verse 5. Verse 6. Waters encompassed me to the soul. The deep whirled around me. Reeds were tangled about my head.
Crown of thorns.
Just like Yeshua, the crown of thorns. Just like the ram caught in the thicket when the binding of Isaac by Abraham. Verse 7. I descended to the bases of the mountains. That's where we are here. We're down at the base of the mountains of this area of California. The earth, its bars were closed against me forever. Yet you lifted my life from the pit, O Yahuwah Elohi. Those 2 words, Yahuwah Elohi, are the 2 words it says in Zechariah 13:9, and that Yahweh hears and says, hey, this is my people, and rescues and saves them. Verse 8, when my soul was faint from within me, I remembered Yahuwah. That's the turning point. My prayer came to you to your holy temple. Again, we'll look at that word. Verse 9, they watch false vanities, they forsake their kindness. Who's he speaking of? All of a sudden that verse is totally out of context. Doesn't even seem to fit. Verse 10, but as for me, with a voice of thanksgiving, that's hodu, as in hodu la yoakito, I will make sacrifices to you. Sacrifices? Hey, well, because Yeshua died on the cross, we don't have to make sacrifices anymore. So what does that got to do? What I have vowed I will fulfill for the salvation which is of Yahuwah. Then verse 11, then Yahweh addressed the fish and it spewed Jonah onto the dry land. Okay, so the point is here, things turned around when Jonah turned his thoughts while in the belly of the fish. He turned his thoughts to Yahuwah and says, I will again gaze at your holy temple. He called out, and then Yahweh addressed the fish, and the fish spewed him up. Total miracle. It changed everything. Yahweh responded when Jonah responded. They watch false vanities. They forsake their kindness. We'll look at that in a moment. The point is, I will fulfill what I vowed. I will make sacrifices to you. Okay, we're going to look at this, then we'll look at Isaiah 2. One way to read this is, the word for holy temple is Hayakal Kadosh. The word Hayakal, Hey Yod Kaf Lamed, literally means to have the power and capacity to prevail. Mem Kaf Lamed Hey is the word perfection. And then Kadosh is where we get the word holy, which is to say what was uttered from his mouth. Remember the angels that surround his throne are saying Kadosh, 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 which is they behold him in his purity, Yahweh, and the only thing they can say is Kadosh. So what is purely of him is Kadosh. And to have the power and capacity to prevail is the letters Yod Kaf Lamed. So there's something about, if you're reading this alphabet in the Kadosh perspective, meaning what's his perspective, not the way we translate them into words, but what's it talking about? If you read it in the sequence, Ket Tet Yod came right before Yod Kaf Lamed. Ket Tet Yod is the word for my sin. I incurred guilt, my sin offering, to cleanse me so that I can be restored and be found favorably. That's a picture of Yeshua being put to the crucifixion and tomb. And then Yod Kaf Lamed Mem, the next four letters, is a statement about that. He will have the power and capacity to prevail. So I can read that as to say, if I offer sacrifice to Yahweh, metaphorically, in the olden days it was physically offering an animal, or because of Yeshua, that was our sin sacrifice, which was discussed other times, I can say, then I can choose to believe this narrative of Yod Kaf Lamed Mem in the same way that Yeshua prevailed from the depth of being put into physically into destruction. Kaf Lamed Mem, calamity, down into the ruin, like we were talking in the other video, that Mem is the depth of disintegration. The promise of what was written as the alphabetic code as a narrative, the alphabetic letter sequence, Aleph through Tav, is a prophetic narrative that we can read, take hope, and say, Yeshua did it as our prototype model, and he said, follow me, so we will do it. Whether we die in flesh or just theoretically, rhetorically, you might say, hypothetically, as the nation of Israel in the being lost its identity and coming back, or humankind in general, me personally, I can attend to these things and find that within these words is the promise of restoration and the power to prevail according to the Kadosh, not the human translation, but according to the Kadosh intention. So that's what I choose to see here in the meaning of these words. So then verse 10, Ani bekol todah, I with voice of giving thanks. Then the word Aleph Zayin Bet Tet Hey Azavacha is I will slaughter or sacrifice. But the word Aleph, Zayin, Vav, Bet is the word for hyssop. Why is it that the Israelites were told to use hyssop to dip in the blood of the Passover lamb and paint it on their doorposts? Because there's something about the word hyssop. Bet, Ket, Nun, though there's no noon here, it's a hey, that's just an alternative suffix, means an assayer or auditor, differentiate, distinguish, examine, test, and watchtower. So you were talking about that peak we saw, which was like this lookout mountain looking over this entire valley, and about the ones that were supposed to be the watchers, not the angelic watchers, but the human watchers, the pastors, the teachers, have been looking at stuff and falling asleep and can't even speak, like dogs that can't bark. So I believe in this word for slaughter is us, and the word Zayin Bet means to flow and issue or dripping, like a drips. This waterfall is composed of numerous drips. Michael Franks did a beautiful song about Iguazu, the incredible waterfall in Brazil. And he was saying how each little drop of rain that dropped on the petal of an orchid and then turned into this raging waterfall. Beautiful song, you should look it up. Iguazu, like agua's word water, and the same root word, Iguazu. Anyway, the point is, drop by drop. And he said, have these words tied about as frontlets between your eyes. And that word frontlet literally is the word for drop or drip. And there's another verse where Yeshua said, whoever's thirsty, let him ask. And if you take one drop of Yahuwah's incredible Mayam Chayim, living water, it'll turn into a gusher, a geyser flowing out of you. There's this whole thing about water in the Mishle, the metaphors of Yahuwah. So we could read this word of I will sacrifice as having the word to differentiate and distinguish as a watchman. And this driplet, drop shape of water and hyssop, and putting that all together, Passover is not what we were told. Easter is not what we were told. To observe the Moedim of Yahweh and examine and differentiate, which is why we keep going on and on about it. We were lied about this and we should come back to the truth of that, is because that's what Yahuwah demands of us if we really want to pursue him. And he, fortunately, it's like when we were in Boy Scouts. Hey, let's go studying trails out in the woods. It's like, well, where's the trail? Well, somebody has to go before you and make the trail so you can use your trail skills and see if you can find the signs to stay on the trail. This is like a big, well, what people have is an Easter egg hunt. This isn't an Easter egg hunt. This is you might call it a Pesach trail. Pesach literally means to jump over, to cross over, which is the word for Hebrew. And so here Yahweh is given all these signs that are in his language, which are Mishle, metaphors in nature, where we can look at this stuff and say, it appears like he wants us to be about this business. And so for us to say, if he wants me to sacrifice one day of the week, and he wants me to sacrifice my time, my schedule, my potential earnings for the Moedim, is that too much to ask? If he said, look, sit down on these days, study these words, fellowship, have good food. Gee, what a burden. But that's what he said. It's like he set up, picture scales of balance. You know, you go to the grocery store years ago and you put certain things in this weight and it counteracts it with this, or we don't use that anymore these days in our culture, but scales of balance. Yahweh put on this side, I will be your Elohim. I will provide for you. I will defend you. I will make nature cooperate. I will give you my promises for eternity to be with me forever. And what did he put on the other side? Believe, but also do righteousness, conduct justice, rest on the Sabbath day, regard the Moedim, and I might say also regard his language, know his name, because his name's in the meanings of the letters. What we said in the last video, that in the letters of the alphabet, Lamed, Aleph, Vav, Tav, La'ot, in the meanings of the letters of the alphabet, each one of them hold the oath of his name forever. That's what he seemed to say. And so for Jonah to be at the depth of 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of this fish. And this is what he says: I give thanks and I will sacrifice to you. I will Is he going to kill lambs? Is that what he's talking about? Or is he saying, listen, you want me to regard your day, I'll regard your day. You want me to learn your language, I'll learn your language. You want me to take drip by drip, letter by letter, and it'll turn into the millennial kingdom of thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. It'll turn into all the promises Yahweh gave our forefathers coming true. I expect in our day, just like a drop of rain falling on the leaf of a petal of an orchid turning into iguazu. To you I will watch and differentiate every drop that I have vowed, or what is ever either vowed or forbidden by vow. I will always peacefully and totally, complete requital, submit and surrender. So Jonah is sitting here saying, whatever you want, just tell me whatever you want. And the next two words is Yeshuata la Yahuwah. He will save by Yahweh, or saved by Yahweh. Isn't there a song on the radio they used to play, Saved by Zero or something like that?
Yeah.
This isn't saved by zero. This is saved by the Ein Sof, the one who lacks nothing. There ain't no zero with Yahuwah. The one who will fulfill every single letter of what he said. Yeshuata la Yahuwah. Saved by Yahweh. And then that sets us up for Isaiah chapter 2. The prophecy of Isaiah, it will happen in the end of days. Well, if these are the end of days, they're certainly looking like they're pushing the end of our generation days. Let's suppose it's now. The mountain of the temple of Yahweh will be firmly established as the head of the mountains. But again, what does that mean? Let's see, Har Bet Yahweh. Har is the word mountain, but I can also say it's to be made obvious and distinguished. I can point at that waterfall and say, well, that's not a mountain, that's a waterfall. But if you come down here, what's the distinguishing feature? The waterfall. So in a way, that's Har. Even though the word Har is mountain, it's also to be pregnant. Hey Resh, the head, notable, that which is above all the rest. It's the waterfall. It's the thing that Yahweh said. And then Bet is house, but Bet Yod Tav. Bet Yod means in me, with me, of my, and Tav is a sign of the covenant. So I can read the word Bet is literally saying domesticated of my house. What are the rules of his house? So is it the mountain of the house, or is it to be noticeably choosing to regard the things that Yahweh said to regard as being of his domicile? Har Bet Yahweh. Barash Ha Harim, at the head of the mountains. But I could say that that also means the most significant and foundational of anything of any regard, anything of any importance. More significant than this waterfall or the Iguazu waterfall, more beautiful, more significant is understanding the words that Yahweh actually said. Nan ve nasa, deceived, exalted, carried away. It also means to transfer, transport, forgive, or claim a debt. Me gimel bet ayin vav tav gevaot. It will be exalted above the hills. It will be firmly established. All the nations will stream to it. And that word for stream is, I believe, nahar. But it means to flow, stream, shine, beaming. Yahweh's words, what these words mean, will become the most preeminent feature on the face of the earth. And all the nations will be streaming toward understanding what Yahweh said. That hasn't happened. I believe it's happening by looking at this ancient Hebrew. Many people will go and say, come, let us go to the mountain of Yahweh, the Har Yahuwah, to the temple. And again, the word temple is either Hekal or Bet, or it might even be Mikdash, the Kadosh place, or HaMakom, which is the established place. Anyway, It's these words and what they mean. It's the covenant that he promised to his people. Let us go to the Har Yahweh, to the temple of the Elohim of Jacob, and he will teach us of his ways, and we will walk in his paths. For from Zion, well, it's not Mount Zion, because as we said in the other video a couple days ago, Zion, Zadi Yod Vav Nun, means one who does what he says, as manned up on his crew. Will the Torah come forth, and the word of Yahuwah from Jerusalem? And the word Jerusalem can be read as the inheritance. The inheritance promised to the people, the sons of Jacob, the 12 tribes, not just the Jews, the 12 tribes. The inheritance he promised was in the Torah instructions, according to us obeying what he said. And so the whole Christian church that claims to be the replacement of Israel makes as their foundational doctrine that the law, the Torah, though the actual law was Chok, not Torah, Torah's teaching and instruction, that it was all nailed to the cross and done away with. And that we were told by some that even if we chose to do, tried to do, intended to do what he said, that would be a sin, because we can't. We have to so be under the blood of the Savior that we should disobey what he said to revel in his grace. What a complete perversion. Now you can believe whatever you want, but I choose to believe these words. He will judge, verse 4 of Isaiah 2, he will judge among the nations and will settle the arguments of many peoples. That would be doctrinal disputes, and what calendar is the right one, I would guess. They will beat their swords into plowshares, their spears into pruning hooks. Nation will not lift its sword against nation, and they will no longer study warfare. O house of Yaakov, come, let us walk by the light of Yahweh. That hasn't happened yet. Here it is, 2020. People are talking about the end of the world, but I keep saying it can't happen yet. Why? Because of this. Verse 6. For you have abandoned your people, the house of Jacob, because they were filled with sorcery of the east, which also means ancient past, and divinations. Like the Philistines, they content with themselves with the children of foreigners. Everything has gotten off base. And the condition in the Christian church these days, and I don't know how to account for Hinduism, Buddhism, Judaism, or all I can say is this is the only place for the truth, in the Torah. And I'm not trying to punch anybody in the nose other than to say for 50 years of my life, I was not taught these words. Its land became full of silver and gold with no ends to its treasures. Its land became full of horses with no end to its chariots. Then its land became full of false gods. Each one of them bows to his own handiwork, to what his fingers have made. Humankind has bowed and man has humbled himself. You will not forgive them. How do we find forgiveness? By abandoning the false gods that our own hands have made. The false gods that our customs and doctrines have amalgamated and incorporated, blending with things from the Bible which are not of Yahuwah. And so the way that we turn away from those things that were wrong, that were not true, that were blended. Isaiah chapter 3, we talked about this before. Respected person, advisor, teacher of the wise, comprehender of mysteries. Yahweh takes away all the insights that he had given to his people as treasures. Future chapters later, he talks about the recovery. Fred's going to give a bit of a talk on what's called the millennial reign. So there's a-mill, pre-mill, post-mill. There's this 1,000-year reign. Is it going to come, the Christians, the believers, 1,000 years in the heaven? Is there going to be 1,000 years of peace on earth when something like this, Isaiah chapter 2, will be actualized? Zechariah talks about a long time, 1,000 years of living on the face of this earth. I've heard it said that based on the book of Revelation, the devil's going to tear this place apart and it'll be such a ruin that nobody would want to live here. And that's what it's going to be like for 1,000 years. Is that true? Or is it like we read in the Old Testament here, that Yahweh restores his people and makes 1,000 years when we're living in what he had promised from the beginning, that it could have been a wonderful life. Could have been. But because every man of his people, who were supposed to be priests to the world, turned away from the Torah, turned away from Yahweh's instructions, blended the understanding of the Bible, of the scriptures, with other cultures, other Elohim, Elohim Achrim, false gods, other deities, other stories, Greek and Roman deities. The names of the days of the week and the months of the year are all blended with ideologies from other religions or heathen or pagan cultures. Everything is so messed up. The reason to go back to these words of Hebrew, I believe it's the Kadosh matters. The Yechal Kadesh. The only place where that has contained within it the power and capacity to prevail is in the Kadosh, purely from Yahweh. Ancient Paleo Hebrew. Everything else has been convoluted, and we're disoriented. In my understanding, the only thing we got is to look at these letters, and yet, once we do look at these words and these letters and these instructions, which is why I don't work on Saturday anymore, and like I said, it might be according to the different calendar, the sliver, the moon, that's another regard. But at least as far as I've got at the moment, I know it's not Sunday, this is the holy day, because the Catholics themselves are proud to say, by their authority, they changed the day from the 7th day to the 1st to prove that their word was more authoritative than the words spoken by the voice of Elohim on Mount Sinai, written by his own finger in tables of stone, reiterated in Isaiah 55, and on and on. In the Catholic Church, the Roman Empire wanted to prove its victory over the words of Yahweh Eloheinu by changing the day. So anybody that would take hold of the truth, anybody that would choose to have a zeal for Yahweh's words, to please his heart, I believe that by us of the lost tribes, not Jewish, to return to his day, his words, his Moedim, is to restore. He said he would put rivers of water in the desert, and that he would restore the land of Israel. I fully expect the entire ecosystem of the land of Israel to change, one way or another, whether he shifts the earth on its axis, if there is such an axis, with the spin of the flat pancake, or whatever the model looks like, or hits the thing with an asteroid, or maybe he'll even use such a cataclysm like this COVID-19 coronavirus. He can use whatever he wants, but I fully expect him to change the ecosystem of the earth and the condition of his people, and to pour out a blessing the likes of which humanity has never seen, because that's what he said. And that's the story that's written in the Aleph Bet. When you get to Yeshua rebirthing, resurrecting, Pei Zadi, and then ascending up, Kuf Resh, somewhere in there should be the metaphor, just like Jonah being spewed out by the fish. And you say, yeah, right, how's that going to happen? Just like we read in Jonah chapter 2. Yahuwah will address the fish. Yahuwah will address the earth and spew out Israel from the dispersion, from its internment in its prison, and bring us back to where we were supposed to be. And I think that's what the millennial reign speaks of. And that's where Fred is going to be talking about over 100 chapters of the scripture that he's found discuss that matter. And yet with the pre-mill, post-mill, ah-mill, that entire discussion of eschatology that I've heard for my whole life doesn't address it at all. Anyway, it should be an interesting conversation, an interesting subject. That the reason for bringing it up is because if you've never heard that subject, that there might be 1,000 years in front of us of Yahweh's favor on the face of the earth. As long as heavens and earth prevail and endure, his words are true. They were not done away with. The word that goes out of his mouth has to come true, as we just read in the last video, Isaiah 55. It has to. Well, then we should harbor the hope, the tikva, the active hope under tension of, let's see it happen.
Show some tenacity.
Some tenacity.
It just reminds, see that tree growing out of that rock over there?
Can you zoom in on that? A pine tree
That's tenacity.
growing on the top of a rock.
Growing right out of a little crack there, huh?
I hadn't noticed that.
What are you looking at?
There's a good picture of like life being found in the cleft of the rock.
That's amazing.
Well, we promised a 20-minute video, so we should probably say adios.
Let me zoom in again on that. Oh, I got glare in here. I don't even know if I'm hitting it. The glare is horrible in this lens right now. Oh, there it is. Okay. Look at that little thing growing right out of that crack. That's amazing.
We need to expect to be able to survive no matter what's going on, just like that tree growing out of that rock. Yahuwah is our rock. We are His planting. We can grow wherever He puts us, and we have to have that hope, with that zeal, with that active. And remember, as soon as Jonah came to his senses, and he just says, hey, I'll sacrifice whatever you want. You want me to sit on Shabbat? I'll sit on Shabbat. You want me to keep the Moedim? I'll keep the Moedim. You can rescue me. You put me in this fish. Boom! The fish spits him out. Jonah was back on his business, and that whole thing turned into be the greatest prophetic statement proving that Yeshua is HaMashiach that there ever was. So Jonah being turning and running, did he have to do that? Was a prophecy? Was that his own volition? But whatever happened,
he was
get him
trying
there,
to
it was
escape
turned.
Yahuwah's jurisdiction.
Yeah, no, but it was even that was turned into the greatest prophecy of that Yeshua is Mashiach.
Yeah, it's amazing, huh?
Yahweh can choose to use us no matter where we find ourselves, no matter what we've done.
It's funny.
He can turn it all to good.
It's funny, he thought he could get a ship and get out of Yahuwah's jurisdiction. I'm going to get out of here. All right, brother. Head back to the cabin, I guess.
Shalom.
Shalom.